2013. We welcome you here, and before we begin, I want to welcome Carl Eaglin down on that end to our board. He is an appointment from the Plan Commission, which appointments for this board are all set up by state law. Plan Commission's put him here. He's a lifetime resident of Madison and a great addition to the board, and I personally am very, very glad you're here.
Thank you very much.
The minutes, board members, have you all had a chance to look at last month's minutes?
Scott, we need to conduct a roll call first.
Oh, sorry, got ahead of myself. Yeah, roll call.
Mark Acosta.
Here.
Nancy Burkhart.
Here.
Carl Eaglin.
Here.
Rick Ferris.
Here.
Scott Bolden.
Here. You don't pay much, you don't get much here. Now we can do the minutes. Board members, have you all had a chance to look over minutes last month's meeting? Any additions or corrections?
I have none.
I'm done.
We'll take a motion to approve.
I make a motion, we approve last month's meetings
Second.
minutes.
Second.
And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed no, and the minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is renewals. We have quite a few this month. I'll just briefly read the ones who have paid. John Aaron, Jennifer Harmon, Andrew LeGrand, Carl Hungnes, Monty and Nellie Mason, Susan Smith, Anna Lauterbaugh, Ryan Rogers, and Ryan Rogers for another, have all paid their renewal fees. No complaints. Therefore, I move that we renew these conditional uses.
Second.
And all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed no. They are renewed. There are three. Number 2 on the agenda, Anderson's Land Investments, 2920 Clifty Drive. No complaints. Number 5, Lena Burns for a daycare, 124 Crestwood Drive. No complaints. And number 11, Michael Holchak, short-term rentals, 1850 Adams Drive. No complaints. Therefore, I move we instruct the attorney to send them a letter with the usual terms that their conditional use permit is expired. However, if they pay their renewal fee by our next regular meeting, it will be renewed. Do we have that's my motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And can we have a roll call?
Mark Acosta.
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart.
Yes.
Carl Eaglin.
Yes.
Rick Ferris.
Yes.
Scott Bolden.
Yes. Now moving on. Next item on the agenda is a tabled application. Jessica Lawless, the New Life Fellowship, requesting a conditional use permit for a daycare child care ministry, 1542 Clifty Drive, and that is local business. So would someone from the church or Miss Lawless, would you come up here and explain to the board what you want to do? And we do need your name and address for the record.
My name is Jessica Lawless. I live at 322 Hanover, or 322 Marine Street, Hanover, and the daycare is at 1542 Clifty Drive in Madison. And we'd like to open our daycare to help with the need in the community for daycare services for infants and families with multiple children that are having trouble finding care in our community.
Any questions, board members?
How many do you expect that you will be having there each day? Do you have a limit on your license, or I'm not familiar with how that works?
The child care ministries are a little bit different than in-home care and licensed care centers, so we are a little more leeway, but we plan to stay within the limits of what they put forth for child care centers as well, so that we don't overwhelm the staff.
Okay.
We have myself and Taylor are full-time right now, and then we have quite a few volunteers that come in and help.
And this is for the church. I mean, this will be a moneymaker for the church, and then, of course, a help to the community also.
We, generally whatever we make, we're gonna put back into the daycare and pay mine and Taylor's salary, and that's it, so,
Okay, so kind of a non-for-profit,
right,
under the church umbrella name.
right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, board members?
Now, you say the child ministry is different, but are you still regulated by someone?
Yes, we're still regulated by the state, just like the child care centers are and the in-home care centers that are licensed.
Well, you're certainly correct in that the community needs more child care. I know when mine were little, it was hard to find child care, so she is correct
There's
about that.
several, families that have approached us that have infants or
Right.
are pregnant and can't even get on waiting lists
You're
because
right.
they're that far behind.
Right, you're right.
I assume that your childcare will be inside the church and there will be no construction of anything?
Correct,
You have Monday through Friday?
yes, 6:30 to 5:30.
Any other questions, board members? Would anyone in the audience like to speak for or against this application? Well, then I think you ladies can have a seat. One last chance, board members. Any other questions? None? Well, then, the public comment time, or time for comment is closed, and we'll move on to our findings of fact. And this is a conditional use. And it would be category 681.
Is this something that will come up every year on the conditional
Well,
use?
that depends on the motion.
Okay, okay.
The length of time of a conditional use permit is set by a motion of the board.
Okay.
Frequently, they're 1 year. Sometimes things come up. Sometimes things come up that are 5 years, 10 years.
Okay.
For example, there was recently
Church. Church?
there was a church, but I'm thinking of that battery facility that's going in up on the hill.
Oh, okay.
And that is a utility, and they had a 30-year agreement of renewals of lease, so we gave them 30 years.
Gas station on Michigan as well.
And there was a gas station,
Okay.
but typically things that could be a problem in a neighborhood, they're typically a year, but it can be more. It can be in the motion.
Well, Jessica, would you,
Well, sir, go ahead.
well, I was just saying, do you want a 1 year, 2 year, or I mean, what, or yes?
1 year's fine.
Okay, thank you.
We will go through our findings of fact. Board members, number one, this is the one, is 681 the proper category? Mr. Acosta,
Yes.
Mr. Ferris,
Yes, I believe it is.
Mrs. Burkhart,
Yes, 681's allowed in local business with conditional use.
Mr. Eaglin,
Yes.
and I think 681 is appropriate. Number two, this goes along with the zoning ordinance or the comprehensive plan. Mr. Acosta,
Yes, I think, the additional child care service to the community is, very well within that.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I think, the applicants are meeting a need and, the type of business fits in the, category very well.
Mrs. Burkhart,
I agree with those comments.
Mr. Eaglin.
I agree with all the comments made.
And being at 681, and that's in section 7, that is part of the comprehensive plan, so that one's met. Number three, this is the existing or intended character of the general vicinity. Does it fit in, Mr. Acosta?
Yeah, obviously being totally indoor, no new construction, other than, maybe slightly more traffic, that'd be the only thing that would even be noticed.
Mrs. Burkhart, or
Yeah, I agree, it doesn't change the character of the area.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I think it fits in well with that area.
Mr. Eaglin,
Yes, should be great for the neighborhood and
and the
Nice.
character of the general area, I think since 1974 has been a church and now two churches. So this is certainly no different from a church, so I think that it changes nothing. Number 4, hazardous, disturbing to neighboring uses, Mr. Acosta.
Don't see it having any impact at all.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I don't see it having any impact on the neighborhood either.
Mrs. Burkhardt.
I agree with that comment.
Mr. Eaglin.
No impact on it, just positive use for our community.
And I do not think it will disturb the neighborhood. Number 5, this is about utilities, Mr. Acosta.
Obviously, as an operating facility now, they're not doing any construction to it, so, should be no issue whatsoever.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I think it'll be served adequately. It's an existing structure with accommodations for a lot of people, and now it'll accommodate a lot of kids.
Mrs. Burkhardt.
I think it's adequately served.
Mr. Eaglin.
I agree with all the previous comments.
And it's on Clifty Drive, which is adequately served by all that stuff. That one's met. Number 6, not detrimental to the economic welfare of the community, no requirements of public expense, Mr. Acosta.
No, it's the, no additional public expenses at all.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I see no reason to believe it'll be any of those things.
Mrs. Burkhardt.
It's actually a needed service in the community.
Mr. Eaglin.
It's a needed service and not what's right. Anything we do to help along.
I agree, it's a necessary service today. I think that one's met. Number 7, this is problems from excessive production of traffic, noise, smoke, fumes, glare, Mr. Acosta.
Other than maybe a little more noise inside with the kids, I don't see it having any impact at all.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I don't think the kids are gonna make a noticeable difference in that area.
Mrs. Burkhardt.
I see no problem with all those.
Mr. Eaglin.
Should be just fine.
And we have other daycares around Madison, and there have never been any complaints to my knowledge, so I think that one is probably no issue. Number 8, this is about interfering with traffic, Mr. Acosta.
No, the church has a large parking lot, multiple entrances. I don't think there's any impact whatsoever.
Mr. Ferris.
I agree with Mr. Acosta's comments.
Mrs.
I
Burkhardt.
too agree with those.
Mr. Eaglin.
I agree also.
And I think this is not even an issue, given there are 2 fairly large churches right there, and it's never been a problem. Number 9, this is about loss of historic features, Mr. Acosta.
No, it's got no exterior impact whatsoever.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I mean, nothing's gonna change, so it won't have a negative impact on any of those things.
Mrs. Burkhardt.
I see no negative impact there.
Mr. Eaglin.
I see all positive with it.
And I don't even think that, I know of no historic features there. I think that's not even an issue. We have gone through our findings of fact. I move we approve this conditional use permit for a period of 1 year.
Second.
And can we have a roll call?
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhardt,
Yes.
Carl Eaglin,
Yes.
Rick Ferris,
Yes,
Scott Baldwin.
Yes. We wish you well, folks. Now we move on to new applications. First item on the agenda, Landon and Amy Ralston, conditional use permit for home occupation for purchase and sales of firearms by appointment only, 1970 Clifty Drive, that is R8, under category 111. We have somebody here to speak for this. If you give your name and address, please, for the record.
Landon Ralston, 1970 Clifty Drive.
And could you explain to the board exactly the details, what you plan to do?
Home-based FFL license holder for appointment only for the purchase and sale of firearms.
Any questions, board members?
Yeah, because I know nothing about this. So tell me how many you can, is there a maximum amount you can have? What kind you can have? Is that within this FFL?
No, there's no maximum, and the kind depends on the FFL that I apply for.
So what kind are you applying for?
It will be, handguns and long guns.
Will you have any muzzle loaders? Will you be storing any black powder or anything of that nature at your residence,
For personal use.
but not for sale?
No.
Okay.
So like you're gonna have a can of gunpowder, but not a barrel.
Correct.
Or a keg of it.
So are there certain hours you're gonna run the business or certain days or?
It's just by appointment only.
So essentially, you're gonna have one car at a time come in,
Yes.
so there'll never be any concern about large crowds and
I hope not.
What about, other items that go along with that? I assume you'll carry ammunition?
No ammunition.
No ammunition? Okay. No other types of,
No.
okay.
We have the ammunition parts there for those that self-load and,
No.
no, okay.
we're asking that because that is an issue on number 7. But I have personally reloaded ammunition and I don't think there's any problem, and I want to note for the board that we have a couple of other places similar to this in Madison, one in Sunrise and one a few blocks over downtown. And to my knowledge, there've never been any complaints or any issues.
Do you have to have something specific to store the guns?
The ATF hasn't notified me of anything yet. But I'm sure you would have to have a locking safe and a locked room.
There will be no signage or anything on your property?
No.
for this?
Any other questions, board members?
So you have to have our permit first before you even apply for this FFL?
Yes, I have to have a conditional use permit.
And being you're a federal firearms license dealer, you are subject to pretty stringent regulations, aren't you?
Yes.
So it's not just a Madison issue, it's a federal issue too. Any other questions, comments, board members? Would anyone in the audience like to speak for or against this proposed conditional use? Have a seat, sir. And ma'am, if you could give your name and address for the record, please.
Sure, good evening. My name is Judy Kaler. I live at 414 Broadway, and my family and I have property that adjoins 1970 Clifty Drive, both on the north and on the west sides. I'm one of only 3 or 4 property owners in this area who received a notification about tonight's meeting, and when I realized this, I thought the neighborhood really needed to know what was being planned for this development because it's a big issue for some of the homeowners in that area. So I went around and talked to everybody and showed them the application so they're aware of what's on the agenda tonight. And I have 1 or 2 other residents with me this evening. So a little bit about our neighborhood. It extends from the north entrance of Clifty Falls to the intersection of Highway 62 and Green Hills Drive. And it's long been a quiet, well-maintained residential neighborhood with families, children, retired folks, and virtually no crime. We take pride in our area and we want to keep it that way. We like our neighborhood the way it is. The introduction of gun sales and possibly, well, Mr. Ralston said there would be no other equipment, but it brings with it the potential for crime such as break-ins, theft, vandalism, accidents. It may also increase vehicular traffic depending on how many appointments he has in one day, and traffic is already an issue on Highway 62. While most people I know who own guns have purchased them legally and use them appropriately, as we all know, there are some folks who seek gun ownership outside the law and with ill intent. So we don't want to introduce this kind of traffic into our neighborhood. I doubt anyone in this room would like that kind of traffic next to their home. And we don't know what kind of traffic this will attract because people may come in at night, for break-ins or whatever. This area is zoned residential, and it's zoned that for a reason, to protect us from incursions of commercial properties, commercial businesses, which could undermine our quality of life and decrease our property values. There are many other options in Madison for placing a gun store. Farther west on 62, there's a lot of commercial area. Farther east on 62, there's a lot of commercial area. I just think that would be a better place for a gun store than is in a residential neighborhood. So I have brought with me tonight a petition signed by 24 neighbors of 1970 Clifty Drive, who respectfully request that the application for this variance be denied. And who should I give this to?
You can bring it here. Thank you. And we'll take one moment here, board members. I move we enter this remonstrance petition into the permanent record.
Can we see it first?
It's a set of petitions. That's just a routine motion that we accept this into the record. Which motion is because it's a formality we have to do. Take a look at it. Well, having looked it over, board members, I still have the motion on the floor that we accept this into the record.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It's accepted into the record. Mr. Ralston, would you like to come up and address the concerns of your neighbors?
So most FFL dealers in the country are home-based FFL dealers. So that means that more firearms are sold through home-based dealers. The ATF requires me to do the conditional use permit because I have a business intent, and the business intent is to that an opportunity exists for profits. So that's the purpose of setting up a home-based FFL. Again, it's going to be by appointment only. I don't believe it'll increase any kind of traffic or any kind of crime. If there's concerns about anything else, feel free to ask the questions and I'll answer them.
So how will you advertise for this business?
I'm not gonna advertise.
Are you gonna have set business hours?
I'm not gonna have set business hours. It's gonna be by appointment only.
Well, I'm sure the neighbors are concerned about what time they appoint, they're like 3 o'clock in the morning, they're a bit concerned about that.
My bedtime's 8:30.
So you would have, if the board were to grant it, you'd have to, I think it would almost be necessary to say appointments will be between the hours of whatever.
Okay.
We can make that in a motion.
That
Do
would be
you
part of it.
work during the day? I mean, are you looking at just evening traffic?
From between 8 and 5 by appointment.
Okay.
8 AM and 5 PM by appointment.
And you said it'd be handguns and long guns.
Yes.
By long guns, do you mean shotguns, hunting rifles? Do you mean AR-15s? What do you
Any
mean?
long gun or handgun.
Because I think the neighbors have visions of machine gun type looking things.
I believe that the type of firearms that other people purchase shouldn't be any kind of concern of the neighbors.
Any other questions, board members?
But I think it's hard to really imagine what's going on when we don't know how many people are gonna be buying things. We don't know specific hours. They're just kinda have some questions to me. I don't know how the others on the board feel.
We had a application from a guy in Sunrise, which you all know that's a pretty high-class subdivision over by the golf course. And there have been no problems whatsoever there. That's a neighborhood quite similar, well, has many similarities to your general neighborhood.
I thought this was repair.
But frankly, I'd have to go,
I thought that was for repair of guns,
that was for repair, yes.
right, not storing and selling.
Well, there would be some firearms on the property, so with, as the applicant has said, there's not gonna sell ammunition, so people will come in, look around, buy something, go back out. We do need some details.
It's not, I'm not gonna have, it's gonna be a special order purchase if someone buys from me. I'm not gonna have a display. It's gonna be a special order if someone purchases a firearm from me.
So you're saying you're not gonna keep an inventory there?
No.
For example, I used to live near Griffith, Indiana, which has a very well-known gun store up there, very large with a big inventory. And they never had any trouble.
It's not gonna be a typical home front or a business front. It's just gonna be me and whoever wants to purchase.
So you're saying that your business plan is that you'll be there at your home, you'll have a potential customer come in, you'll look over various options, and you're not gonna have a stock of firearms there, that you'll go home with one, but you'll order custom firearms, things like that?
Yes.
Like those $5,000 Weatherby Magnums and things like that?
Yes.
So the neighbors are concerned, as I hear it, neighbors are concerned about a cache of firearms there that people are gonna wanna break into your home and steal. So you're saying that this is not at all your business plan and you won't have those things there?
No. Special order by appointment only between the hours from 8 to 5.
And you said you're not gonna advertise. How will people know about your business?
Word of mouth.
So handguns, they'll be the same. You're not gonna have a stock of handguns?
No.
So,
No website,
No.
anything like that, no? So just kind of a catalog that you will have there for folks to look through?
They can tell me what they want and I'll find it.
so this is almost kind of business you could do over the telephone, isn't it?
Well, they would have to fill out a 4473 form.
Oh, I see. The reason you need your home business is because of federal firearm regulations that firearm purchasers have to fill out, which I've forgotten the form.
Yes.
And of course, since you're an FFL dealer, you have to follow all these laws or you get in big trouble.
Yes.
And failure to follow these laws is a federal felony, isn't it?
Yes.
So that probably helps the neighbors a lot that they're The only firearms on the presence will be your own personal,
Yes,
and your business plan is not to have a backdoor thing where you buy a gun and then resell it.
correct.
And that in fact would probably be, is that illegal under FFL regulations?
Yes. Yeah.
So-
Any purchases for me have to have a 4473 proceed.
And of course, anybody that's ever bought a firearm legally knows that you gotta fill out the paperwork. So, in summary then, your business plan is by word of mouth, people hear about you, that you can obtain special firearms or custom-made ones or whatever, custom hunting rifles, highly engraved Colt 45 pistols, things like that, special stuff. They'll come to you, you can have sources to look it up, and you can order it.
Yes, sir.
And then the firearm will come to you, and then they have to come to pick it up
Yes.
and fill out the paperwork that the federal government requires.
Yes.
And if you do anything else, you're subject to being prosecuted as a federal felon.
Correct.
And the Bureau of the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearm people, federal and I'm sure state, they check on you regularly.
They do. They notified the planning office that I needed to have a conditional use permit.
So you're subject to federal and state regulation both,
Yes.
and inspection. Do federal and state regulators actually come to your premises and check up on you from time to time?
Yes.
How often does that happen?
Annually.
So they look over all your paperwork and all your records, and you're required to keep pretty detailed records of what you buy and sell.
Yes. All the firearms are serial numbered. They'll be on the 4473 form when they purchase it.
And of course, that goes into
Database.
the federal database for stolen firearms, should those ever happen.
Yes.
Any other questions, board members?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, certainly.
I just have a question, I know.
Would you come up to the podium so our microphone can pick it up, please?
Mr. Olson has outlined his business plan and how he's gonna operate at home, but I don't think that's a federal regulation that he operates by just ordering out of a catalog or whatever. So who from Madison will monitor that situation and make sure it remains as he has described it to you today? 6 months from now, a year from now, those aren't federal regulations that he operate that way. But this is what he's telling us he's going to do. And I'd hate to see it change down the road to something that's a little more worrisome. I also wonder, how do people test these guns that you buy for them? Where would they be tested when they get a gun from you?
They can test them at their own residence.
Come on up, sir, and answer the questions, please.
Watch over the, no signage and all that.
Landon Ross, 1970 Cliffy Drive, they can test them at their own residence. I mean, when you go to a store, you don't test it in the store, so.
You're not shooting them in your backyard?
Right, we're not
Okay.
shooting in the backyard.
Yeah.
So there will be, so to summarize so far, and, oh, sir, I'm sorry, I should have asked while you were here. The lady had a question. Yeah, come on up. You don't need to give your address again. You had a question about who from, that you, in your view, the federal and state authorities don't oversee him? Was
Well,
that
they
what?
don't oversee everything he described today about how he would operate his business. I don't think all those things are required by federal law, that you not have any guns on premises, or not have any ammunition, or not have any other gun paraphernalia. So what if you change your mind in 6 months and decide to sell ammunition to go with the guns? How would we know that?
Well, that can be addressed in a motion. See, this board has the power to make a motion for a conditional use permit that have conditions attached to it, and we regularly do. So a motion could include no firearms on premises, things like that. So that the terms of the motion of the conditional use permit would be whatever conditions, and anybody that has a complaint can call up the building office here, and they will direct an inspector to go out and examine it, check up on what's happening. So,
So part of the motion, then, we could put in there that no inventory could be
Yes.
kept on premises other than the gun,
Active for sale.
the
active
firearm
sale.
and the process of the transaction. So
And
no
personal use.
inventory. And that would be okay? No inventory?
And no signage?
Yes. Would that be okay with you, Mr. Ross?
And personal use firearms.
Well, yeah,
Oh,
yes,
sure,
yeah,
yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, that's,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
fine.
yeah,
So
okay.
are we talking about a lot of personal guns there, or do we still need to be concerned about security, both for the neighborhood and, say, your children in the home, or?
Well, he has his
Security's
personal
still an
guns
issue.
today, he has his personal guns today that he's entitled to have.
Well, I meant if there were 100 of them that were his personal guns.
well,
I mean, he's allowed to have that many.
under the Second Amendment of this country, this board can't tell somebody for your own personal firearms you've bought yourself and filled out the paperwork that always goes with buying a weapon.
I'm just concerned
We
about the
have no
security.
power to regulate that. We do have power to regulate a business like this.
I was concerned about the security of, if there were multiple guns, are they going to be locked up in a secure area, or?
Are you referring to his personal guns?
I'm sure,
That's his business, yeah.
but I'm sure he has a safe. I mean, you have everything under lock and key, right? I mean, I would,
All of mine are, yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
yes. Okay.
So nothing would be in the pole barn to the side of the house, there would be no gun storage or anything out there?
No signage,
Other than personal use.
right, no signage, then no inventory,
No.
just a transaction firearm that you're dealing with.
Yes.
Okay.
So if someone were to come inspect, how would they know what's personal and what's merchandise for sale?
From the purchase. I'll purchase from an FFL dealer, and if there's something that is not personal use, then it'll have a different FFL, federal firearms license attached to it.
And on that transaction, you also have the name of the buyer and your name as the seller, correct? On the firearm, the new one?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I have any other questions.
Judy, does it make you feel better that there won't be inventory there?
Yes, definitely.
I would think so
And no
too.
signage to attract
Correct.
people,
Right,
that makes it a lot better.
right. I think that kinda clears it up, cause I was foggy at first too, like how many things you're gonna have, what are you gonna have? So I think that helps you and him both to say what's going on.
And I think defining the hours
Right.
helps as well.
Yeah, just clear up everything.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Anything else for me?
Could you give us the hours that you would have customers come in?
Now, you mentioned 8 to 5 is gonna be your,
Yeah,
By appointment only,
by appointment only 8 to 5.
between the hours of 8 AM and 5 PM.
Well, I think you've answered a lot of the neighbors' concerns. And of course, neighbors, you gotta understand that, thoroughly understand this board cannot tell a person how many guns he can personally own. And frankly, you'd probably be shocked if you knew how many are around. We can only regulate the business, and Mr. Ralston has been pretty clear, and members of the public, we do have the power to put conditions on a conditional use permit. and we do quite frequently. So far in some, you've already said your business plan, you're not gonna have a sign. Your business is by appointment only 8 to 5. There'll be no sales inventory. There'll be no ammunition or parts of ammunition. And you don't even plan to use a website, huh?
No.
So you're strictly word of mouth and
Yes.
building up a clientele that way. Any other questions, comments, board members?
Here.
Well, being none, and I think we've pretty well we'll, just to be fair, we'll give audience one last chance. If you have anything new that hasn't already been brought up. Okay, well, and we will call the period of comment closed. You can have a seat, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, board members, we go through our findings of fact, conditional use, and the category here is number 111, which is a home business. And just to make it clear, the zoning ordinance specifies a lot about home businesses. Basically, you can only have yourself and one other employee, and it has to be in your home, and you cannot have other employees. So that's pretty well spelled out. So there are plenty of other existing ordinance or regulations within the zoning ordinance about that category. And that category appears once in a while for various things. So we will go through our findings of fact. And since there's some controversy here, board members, I need you to explain your position for the record. Number one, is this a conditional use? Number 111, is that the right one, Mr. Acosta?
Yes, by your definition just a moment ago.
Mr. Ferris?
Yes, I think it is. It meets the definition very well.
Mrs. Burkhart?
I agree, it meets the definition of home business in category 111.
Mr. Eaglin?
I agree also with the category of 111.
And it's a home business. It seems to me very straightforward, not even any employees besides the owner. So I think that one's met. Number two, is this harmonious with the general objectives of the comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance? Mr. Acosta?
I think so. It's a development of a home business, and growing the business climate here.
Mr. Acosta, or excuse me, Mr. Ferris?
Yeah, I agree as well. It's a home business, and it fits in the general objectives of the city of Madison.
Mrs. Burkhart?
Category 111 is allowed in R8 with a conditional use per the comprehensive plan.
Mr. Eaglin?
Yes, I agree with the home occupation and with his definition of home occupation, with no signage, I believe it's a good use.
And since it is category 111, it fits the criteria of a home business. That is in accordance with the zoning ordinance. Number three, will this be harmonious, appropriate in appearance with the existing or intended character of the general city, and will not change the essential character of the same area? Mr. Acosta?
No, I don't see it having any impact. There's no signage, there's no increase in traffic. Nothing about the facility will be changed or the appearance from the exterior.
Mr. Ferris?
Yeah, I agree as well. It's a home-based business. We've already established there will be no signage. It's by appointment only, so there shouldn't be an increase in traffic. And other than looking like a house, no one will even know that a business is being run out of that residence.
Mrs. Burkhart?
I don't think it'll change essential character, with, specific conditions we can put in a motion.
Mr. Eaglin?
I agree with all the comments. It's gonna look like a home and it's continue to look like a home only.
The essential character of the same area is those nice homes out there with large yards. And I do not see a business run with suitable conditions affecting that. I think that one's met. Number 4, hazardous or disturbing to existing or future neighboring uses, Mr. Acosta.
I don't see it, providing anything hazardous or disturbing. I think the description he's given of how the business would be ran by appointment only, 8 to 5, should not be inviting crime or anything of that nature.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I mean, per the applicant's, testimony, there's not gonna be any, practice shooting by clients, of their purchased weapons, so I see no reason to believe that it's gonna be disturbing to the neighbors.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, I see no disturbance, again, according to specific conditions in a motion.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yes, I agree with the condition. And it's still gonna not gonna hurt the neighborhood. I think it's just gonna be a nice home business.
And with no inventory there, I think the neighborhood is safe. I think that one's met. Number 5, this one's about utilities. Mr. Acosta.
No, it's an existing home, it's gonna continue to be the existing home.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna look like a residence, and, nobody will know the difference.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I think all services are adequately covered there.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yeah, I see no change in utilities that you serve, so.
And I don't even think this is an issue in this case. Number 6, will this create excessive requirements at public expense for facilities and services not detrimental to the economic welfare of the community? Mr. Acosta.
No, there'd be no additional requirements.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I see no reason to believe there'll be additional expense at the, public, cost, and it won't be detrimental to the economic welfare of the community.
Mrs. Burkhart.
Yeah, I see no detriment to welfare.
Mr. Eaglin.
I agree with all the comments.
We heard no testimony from realtors or anybody that says this would adversely affect property values. We've had experience in this town in another somewhat similar neighborhood to having a firearms service, and there have been no complaints, no knowledge of any detriments, so I think that one is met. Number 7, this is about problems involving excessive production of traffic noise, smoke fumes, glare, odors. Mr. Acosta.
No, pertaining to the business, there'll be no ammunition, no discharge of weapons or anything of that nature.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, the operation of the business will not be detrimental to any of those things listed.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, I see no detriment with the conditions in the motion made.
Mr. Eaglin.
I see all the neighborhood conditions just staying the same with this business running.
And since there will be no inventory of firearms and no storage of large quantities of gunpowder or primers or any of that stuff, I see no problem there. Number 8, this is about vehicular approaches, interference with traffic. Mr. Acosta.
Don't see any issue with that, as you mentioned, this would be by appointment only. They're talking about one vehicle at a time.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. As long as the, conditions are that it is, one customer at a time, by appointment only.
Mrs. Burkhart,
I agree with that comment with the conditions.
Mr. Eaglin.
I agree. Comment.
By appointment only is not going to create a large traffic volume. Number 9, this is loss or damage of historic features, etc. Mr. Acosta.
No, it'll, again, won't change anything that's there today. It'll continue to be gentlemen's homes.
Mr. Ferris.
Yep, it'll look like a residence and nobody will know the difference.
Mrs. Burkhart.
Yeah, I see no problem with that one either.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yeah, no change in the.
And I don't even think that's an issue at all in this case. Well, we've gone through our findings of fact. I move we approve this conditional use permit for a period of 1 year, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, no sign, no signage. Number 2, no inventory kept on site, aside from applicants' personal weapons. Number 3, no website. Number 4, no inventory of ammunition or reloading materials. Number 5, to be operated by appointment only, the hours of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And board members, would you like to add any more conditions?
Will this be a 1-year renewal on this?
1 year. That's my motion. 1 year conditional use with these conditions.
I'll second that.
We have a second?
Mark did. I think, did Mark second it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So could we have a roll call?
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart.
Yes.
Carl Eaglin,
Yes.
Rick Ferris,
Yes,
Scott Bolden.
Yes. Now, neighbors, we've given him, I want to make it clear to you neighbors, you heard the list of restrictions. So that means that if, and most people are not really familiar with how strict the federal government and the state government are on legitimate gun dealers. They're pretty strict. Most of us think of guns being sold on the street. Well, a dealer is it's just a different thing. And you're subject to oversight by federal and state authorities. You're free to call in legitimate complaints to the building office, and the appropriate city guy will go out and inspect. It's not the Wild West with a gun dealer, a legitimate federal licensed gun dealer. So all you neighbors are, certainly if you see a violation of these conditions, you're welcome to come to the building office, and there's a piece of paper, it's colored orange, that specifies you have a conditional use, and it specifies all these conditions, and it's always open, the office is. You're always welcome to come in, you're always welcome to keep an eye, you're always welcome to telephone any complaints, and frankly, it's the experience of this board that we've had other firearm related type things. We've never had any issue. And I think that probably he has addressed, in my opinion, he's addressed your major concerns about crime and break-ins and so forth. So this is your government. You're free to keep an eye on things, and you're free to come in anytime you wish, neighbors, and ask questions about anything. So I hope that assuages your concerns. So, sir, you have your conditional use permit for 1 year, and then after 1 year, it will be brought up for renewal. And if you have, next year at this time, concerns, complaints, you're free to come to the meeting and voice them, because like you heard at the outset of this meeting, we went through a whole big long list of people who had renewals of conditional uses. You're welcome at any time to bring up to city government, to the mayor. The mayor's office, as far as I know, is open. You're welcome at any time to come in and voice your concerns, your complaints, your observations. But as board members pretty well indicated, we don't think there will be any problem or any concerns or any crime by the conditions which have been put on this thing. So I hope that helps you out, neighbors. That's the best we can do. So, thank you.
Did you go?
The next item on the agenda. Okay. Next item, Jacqueline Green, a variance from development standards, setbacks to build a carport at the rear of the property. Applicant's requesting a 3-foot setback on west property line, 1-foot setback east line, 1215 West Main, and that's R8. And yes, ma'am, if you could give your name and address for the record, please.
My name's Jacqueline Green, address is 1215 West Main Street.
And could you explain your situation and what you want to do here?
Yes, sir. The current property lines are 30 feet wide and current setbacks are 10 feet on each side, which would only allow a 10-foot wide carport. And I would like to propose to build a 24-foot wide carport, which would only leave 3 feet on each side, so I was just requesting a variance to build that carport.
And I want to commend you. This is a very nice picture.
It's a little rough.
Oh, trust me, ma'am.
Thank you.
It's a very
You ain't
nice
seen
picture.
nothing.
Oh, okay.
It's very nice.
Thank you.
So, what you want to do, you're putting a little porch right here that's even with the side of your house.
Yes, sir.
And in the back, you're putting your little carport. And on either side, there's an existing garage.
Yes, sir.
And I might note, this is one of the situations we have in Madison, that's zoned R8, but yet it's built like historic district residential.
I
You know,
did
that's-
receive my certificate of appropriateness because I did go before the historic board to get the proposed roof over the existing deck. So I don't know, is that still a part of the variance that I would need as well?
Well, I think your application covers all that.
And even with your garage, your 3-foot variance on each side is still, you're still within the footprint of the house itself. right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Actually, the carport in the back will have a 3-foot from the
That's
lot
fine.
line. The house has 1, so it's, if
Yeah.
this was HDR, that would be perfect. There wouldn't even be an issue, but for some reason, this is zoned R8. Any questions, board members? Comments?
No, Jack, you don't allow the neighbors have something similar in their backyard like that too.
Yes, correct. Both neighbors on either
Yeah.
side have garages, complete garages built, and they are 24, 25 feet wide currently.
Actually, you're the only one that doesn't have something in the backyard. I walked back there and took a look.
Is this going to be anchored like in concrete so it doesn't end up at the neighbor's house? and
Yes,
it went-
absolutely. I will be
Okay.
pouring a concrete pad and anchoring it. I don't want it to be blown away any more than anyone
No,
else
I
after I
don't
spend the
Tumbling
money for
down
it.
the Street, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments, board members? Would anybody in the audience like to speak for or against this proposed variance? One last chance, board members. Well, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
We will declare the comment time closed, and we will move on to our findings of fact. And we have 3 criterion per state law. So, number 1, will approval of this application be injurious public health, safety, morals, etc.? Mr. Acosta?
No, not at all. It simply allowing the applicant to utilize the property that they have in similar ways to both neighbors.
Mr. Ferris?
I see no reason to believe it'll be injurious to any of those things.
Mrs. Burkhart?
No, I think she's improving her property, in fact.
Mr. Eaglin?
Yeah, I think with it being anchored in concrete, I think the safety factor is there.
And I see no problem here. It's less than a garage. So, and we've certainly heard no testimony otherwise. Number 2, will this harm adjacent property values? Mr. Acosta?
No, it will not have any impact, maybe a slight positive impact.
Mr. Ferris?
Yeah, I think it'll have a positive effect on the area and the adjacent properties. She's asking to basically do the same thing that her neighbors have done.
Mrs. Burkhart?
Yes, I agree with that comment.
Mr. Eaglin?
Yeah, I think this is just, in the neighborhood, there's a lot of outdoor living space and different things going on down there. I think this will just add to that, and I think it'll be a positive for the neighborhood.
And nobody has spoken either way. There have been no realtors, no recognized authorities, so I think this one's met. Number 3, the practical difficulties. This is always the big one for a variance from developmental standards. Mr. Acosta?
As Mr. Baldwin talked about earlier, we run into this quite often downtown Madison with the lots developed in the manner that they are, the sizes. The practical difficulty here would, if strict application of the ordinance, couldn't use a house, let alone build anything new on it. So.
Mr. Ferris?
Yeah, I mean, the shape of the property, with the existing lot lines, the strict application of the ordinance would prevent the applicant from probably building just about anything.
Mrs. Burkhart?
I agree with those comments.
Mr. Eaglin?
Yes, like I said, it just adds to the outdoor living that people are doing downtown Madison now.
And this is a classic case, like was said. Lots laid out a long time ago. R8 zoning applied to a lot that really shouldn't be R8. A house that's already, you could not add a simple roof to your porch. If you follow strictly the zoning ordinance, you couldn't have a carport, the neighbors couldn't. So there are abundant practical problems, as so often happens downtown. I think that one is well met. Well, we've gone through our criterion. We have a motion.
I move we approve the variances requested.
I'll second the motion.
We have a roll call.
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart,
Yes.
Carl Eaglin,
Yes.
Rick Ferris,
Yes,
Scott Baldwin.
Yes. We wish you well, ma'am. Next item on the agenda, Aaron Grubbs, 1019 Walnut Street, requesting variance of use to put a storage shed on the property and continue to utilize the property for automobile repair.
Hello, board. My name is Aaron Grubbs, and I live at 4607 North State Road 62.
And could you explain your situation?
Yes, sir. I operate a business at 1019 Walnut Street. It's that building on the creek. But it's structurally, it's pretty sound still, and I think if anybody's been by it, you can see that I've made some major improvements to the visuals of it and things. Suffered some losses of storage area in the flood last year, 21, a year or so ago. Yeah. And it was mostly because there was a couple of storage rooms kind of scandally onto the back of that building that were made out of plywood and posts. The rest of the building's brick or concrete block. So those are unusable. They've been unusable for a year, but I'm just getting around to kind of getting this going. And I'd like to put a storage shed, a prefabricated storage shed, as you can see by my, drawing that wasn't as good as Mrs. Green's. But there's an existing 20 by 30 concrete pad there that's been there for years. I mean, it doesn't look real old, it looks fairly new actually, but I don't know what it was there for. And it's between an existing barn and the existing concrete block building. And the building I'm proposing is a prefabricated by Tough Shed, 12 by 20, 12 wide, 20 long storage building with a gabled roof that would really, if I were to set it there right now and it was painted the same as the rest of the building, you'd probably drive by and really wouldn't even notice that it was there. I also do have a current tabled application for a certificate of appropriateness with the historical board. That is on the 25th, I think, of this month, the meeting is. I missed it last month. It kind of came up a day or two after I'd applied for it, and I didn't even realize it was coming.
So it's gonna sit between your buildings right now, you have
Yeah.
one that's or kind of
Yeah,
to the
yeah,
north, and then you got another one there.
Yeah, right, well, the two that are on the back of the building, really, nobody even knows they're there because they're behind the building. Who knows when they were put on there, and they, like I said, they were plywood, and now that they'd gotten wet, and it was really unable to even clean those out after the flood.
Right.
They need to be just taken off, you know, I mean,
Okay.
they're not part of the structure, they're actually, honestly, they're sitting over the creek.
Yeah.
So I think they use them for tire storage or whatever they did. I don't do that, I don't do tires, as a matter of fact, I just had a company come down, because there is a gray barn that is there now,
Right.
pre-existing. It was full of tires, so I paid a company to come from Milan, and they just 3 or 4 days ago emptied that entire building out, which will give me some storage as well.
Okay.
But that building needs some work on the inside because it's just been there a long time, and
Will this building be anchored? The reason I say that because of the flood that we
Right,
had
absolutely,
before, I
yeah.
don't want it floating
no,
away.
that's a perfectly good question.
Yeah.
They do anchor them, and they require an anchor, I believe it goes 4 inches into the ground.
Oh, okay.
Into the concrete. And I don't know if you guys got a copy of that sketch or not from Tough Shed. I believe if you look at the top left of that, it shows all the anchor points there.
Yeah, I think I saw that, yeah.
It's not greatly detailed, but there's a lot. Because I wanted to make it to where, yes, it could be removed, so it is not really a permanent structure, but it is anchored down for weather.
Yeah, okay.
Plus, you're making payments on it, so they don't want to lose their building either. You know what I mean? So yeah.
And you have to follow, since you're are you actually in the floodplain?
I am,
or
and I do have an
floodway?
application filed with the DNR.
And so you have to follow certain restrictions?
I
about
do, and they more or less required that I would be here first,
Right.
for the use, so.
So it is something in the future, if you decide to move your business, you could pull
I
the
can
anchor.
take it up and move it, yes,
Okay.
yeah. And it's not for any hazardous chemicals, I don't do anything like that. The main thing is, we have jacks and stands and things like that, air conditioning machines that we use, and right now, we're kind of moving around them throughout that, because I have 3 bays there, but 2 of them are full of cars, and it's
Right.
not a real deep building, and so I know in previous years, prior to my ownership of it, a lot of stuff sat outside. They had tires stacked up in front of the building, whatever. I don't like the way that looks. Look, as you can see in my thing that I wrote with you, I like the way my business looks. I like the way when people come down 421, I get calls and things, say, wow, I really like the improvements you've made to the building. I'd like to keep that motif.
Now, you still on the hilltop also?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, so
Yes.
far you look like you're pretty busy up there.
Yeah, we stay busy, yeah.
Okay.
And so far, the feedback from the residents of downtown have been they enjoy it, and
Yeah.
honestly, it is the only place in downtown that you can go to get a tire fixed or get an
Sure.
oil change or thing like that, so.
It's true, it's a needed business.
I'd like to keep it
Yeah.
going and keep it looking good, and it's kind of an old relic, but I like it.
There you go. We're all the old relics,
Yeah,
Some of us older than
yeah, I understand.
Board members, a little bit of history. This is a variance of use. Variances of use means that we're that the zoning ordinance has specified certain uses in each zoning district, and this is not one of them. And this is a special deal allowing us essentially to sort of change the zoning ordinance. There is a history here. In September of 2020, you came before this board And what had happened, that had been Daryl's tires for years and years and years. Daryl died, his
Yes.
heirs wanted to sell the place.
Yes.
It was a non-conforming use, as it's known, because that's zone.
It had defaulted back, I think, because it was built before zoning, and I
Right,
think it
it
had
was-
defaulted itself back to residential at
It
the time.
did, right.
Yeah.
Since the use ended, everything started new, that was resident R8. And you couldn't have the business there. Well, the business had been there forever. So you were granted a variance of use, and in the conversation, the only possible objection anybody had was, will there be a whole mess of junk cars and
Yep.
and that, obviously, you've been there for 3 years, and
Yes.
nobody has ever complained about anything. And now, since you have to have this variance of use, since you want to put a new structure there, and you're caught in one of these zoning things that comes up downtown.
Yes.
You know, the building was there in the 19th century, who knows when.
1934 is when it was built.
Well, that was long, 30
Yeah.
years before the first zoning
Yeah.
ordinance. So you're in that kind of limbo that happens downtown, and that's why you're here, and that's why we're considering a variance of use, which is, at least in my opinion, an extremely big deal, and it's not often used. It was used, for example, to put the new jail in, because in that case, that's something super special. And in your case, you're just caught.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
So that is the background of what has happened here before. This is the second time of a variance of use, and the reason is he's caught in the zoning limbo, and he wants to add a storage shed.
If it's any good to the board, if I am granted being able to use this shed, I'll be out of property to be able to add any more sheds.
You're done.
Unless I go up the hill across the
I'll let you
creek.
go back across
I
the
got
creek
2
like the other
acres,
stuff.
it goes all the way up to Fairmont, but it's pretty steep, I don't think I can use that.
Don't do that, that'll be a can of
And
worms like
honestly,
you
in the
never
next
saw
10 years, the
before.
creek might be farther up the building than I can deal with, so.
Well, any questions, comments, board members?
No, I think Aaron's answered a lot of our questions, and like I said, it's a needed use downtown.
Right.
There's a lot of folks that don't like going to the hill and fight all that, and I'm glad you're there.
And honestly, I think, like I said, I'll say it again and then I'll leave it alone. I think driving by, you'll never see it there. It's painted, it'll be painted white. It literally will fit directly between 2 buildings that are already there. And, unless you really know that empty space is between those buildings when you drive by, you'd never even notice the difference. Not from the highway anyway.
Any other questions, board members? Would anybody in the audience like to speak for or against this proposed variance of use? One last chance, board members. Well, then we will move on to our findings of fact. You can have a seat, sir.
Thank you.
Here we go. And I trust you all have your variance of use, finding of fact. This is a variance of use. Board members, we need you to be specific why in your answers, because a variance of use is, even though we've done it before and we understand this situation, it's a big deal.
You're not prepared.
Number 1, will this be injurious to public health, safety, morals, general welfare? Mr. Acosta.
No, not at all.
Mr. Ferris.
No, I don't believe it will.
Mrs. Burkhart.
No, Mr. Grubbs has shown he's kept a neat area for the past 3 years, so I don't see any change in that.
And I do not see any issues here. It's allowing an improvement on a use which this board previously granted. Number 2.
And I agree with all the comments before me, too.
Yes, sorry. Number 2. Use and value of the area of the property badly affected. Will it affect property values around it, Mr. Acosta?
No, I think as the applicant's shown, since he continues to improve that area, this will be another improvement. So obviously no negative impact.
Mr. Ferris?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the applicant takes pride in, keeping this place looking, very nice and I see no reason to believe that this won't, fit in with that same, philosophy.
Mrs. Burkhart,
I agree, I see no negative, impact.
Mr. Eaglin,
I see nothing negative, and just hope the creek doesn't rise, so.
and, there has been none. There really has never been any bad impacts on property values. Either when Daryl's Tire was there or now that you're there, that one's well met. Number 3, need for the variance arises from something peculiar to this property. This big one, Mr. Acosta.
You know, in general, being downtown, we find so much peculiar. Obviously, that particular location is extremely unique. Again, has a history with it. I think a variance of use, and I agree with our chairman, is a big deal, but I think it's meant to be used for those super special situations. And I see this as one of those, so.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I think the peculiarity is that it was an existing business, prior to zoning. It's, survived as a business location, but the, current zoning, definitions, prohibit the current use of what the applicant is intending to do.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, and he already has a variance of use for the current, property he has, and this is just within the parameters of that property.
Mr. Eaglin.
Well, Aaron also needs the storage, plus he also has committed to us that the storage will be inside and not out. And this will just add to that property and to the looks of the neighborhood.
The peculiar problem is that this property is in R8 because of zoning, because of the nature of the zoning ordinance, and it never was proper for that zoning, but it's been there for years. And since prior to that, we saw fit, this board saw fit to allow a variance of use. This one is even less because it's just simply for storage on the property. So the peculiarity is the zoning ordinance conditions itself. Number 4, this is what is the unnecessary hardship that brings about the need of this variance, Mr. Acosta.
Again, the location, and the uniqueness of the buildings and adjacent to the creek and the floodplain, again, a unique situation that, if you follow the strict guidelines of the ordinance, you know, not only you couldn't place the, building, but you may be, going back to the original variance of use that was issued for the business.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I mean, the hardship is that the applicant wouldn't be able to, add needed storage for his business. And as we've already discussed, I mean, the peculiarities of this location are such that, we're trying to allow him to continue to run his business.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree with those prior comments, he wouldn't be allowed to put the storage needed.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yes, I think to keep the business running, especially as it is, he needs the storage. With the uniqueness of the area, I think it's perfect.
And he needs storage, but he couldn't do it under the strict terms of the zoning ordinance, so I think that's a pretty big hardship. Number 5, this does not interfere with the comprehensive plan, Mr. Acosta.
No, on the contrary, I think it keeps, allows a thriving business to continue to go, which is in very much in tune with the comprehensive plan.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Acosta's comments.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, it doesn't interfere, he's trying to keep things neat and clean there, and the storage shed will only help him.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yes, I agree. It just adds to his business and the looks of the business.
And I think Mrs. Burkhart put it very well. Number 6, the the special conditions and circumstances which do not apply to other things in the same R8 district. Mr. Acosta.
I think, again, the location where he's at, the peculiarity of the lot layout with the creek involved and, as well as in the floodplain, issues where he has to get approval from DNR and other agencies as well.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I mean, the location and the confines of the footprint, plus the fact that, you know, he is gonna have to get approval from, DNR because he's in the floodplain.
Mrs. Burkhart.
Yeah, and as we've discussed in detail, he had a variance of use for his, business already, and this is just something he's adding to it.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yes, I think it fits very well, because the business was a business in 1934, long before the restrictions of the zoning. So yes, I think it fits very well.
And the special circumstance is the zoning trap. That the zoning district is one thing, but the business was long before the location on the floodplain. There are plenty of special circumstances. Number 7, this is with literal interpretation of the ordinance, deprive him of rights enjoyed by other properties in the same district. Mr. Acosta.
I think so. I think, again, going back to the uniqueness of the whole downtown area, when justified, we allow for different circumstances. And I think in that case, what we're considering here is not depriving anybody else or depriving him of the same thing.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, just the uniqueness of the situation, we've got a, well-respected business owner that's just trying to run a reputable business. And the ability, for him to add storage like other businesses would do, he's inhibited by the confines of the zoning and the being in the floodplain.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, and as he said, there's a concrete structure there already, a pad, so obviously there was something there in the past, and he's just got the same business as was before.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yes, I think it works very well, because, I mean, if you think about it, there's another garage just out the street there from the Madison Street Department, so it's not like it's a new garage to the neighborhood, so I think it fits very well.
And I see,
A couple businesses across 421.
I see no problems there. The whole issue is that the business is not exactly in the zoning ordinance. It's not permitted by the zoning ordinance, and that's the entire problem, although the business has been there forever. Number 8, does this result from his own actions, Mr. Acosta?
No, to point out Mr. Eaglin's comment, it probably was created in 1934.
Mr. Ferris.
I agree with Mr. Acosta's comments.
Mrs. Burkhart.
No, these are not actions of the applicant.
Mr. Eaglin.
I think it works very well, thank you.
His actions, no. He's merely running a business that was there forever. That was no issue at all. And number 9, will this give him special privileges? Mr. Acosta.
Again, going back to the comment made earlier about uniqueness of downtown, Mr. Eaglin pointed out another garage down the street from him. Several buildings and some spaces across 421 directly across from you that I'm sure have all these unique situations. And those folks are operating those without any issues, so sounds like everybody's getting a fair shake.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I can't, see how he's getting any special privileges. from granting the variance. I just think he's trying to run his business.
Mrs. Burkhart,
Yeah, I see no special privilege.
Mr. Eaglin,
I see no special privilege.
and I don't either. This is just a normal part of running a business. And the business is caught in the zoning problem. Well, we've gone through our findings of fact. We'll take a motion, variance of use.
I make a motion, we grant this variance of use.
Second.
Do we have a roll call?
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart.
Yes.
Carl Eaglin,
Yes.
Rick Ferris,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin.
Yes. Well, we wish you well, sir.
Thank you, Board.
Do I need to make a copy for you?
Moving on, the next one, Kelly Rogers, a conditional use permit to allow for short and long-term rentals, 604 Mulberry Street, Historic District Residential. And somebody here to speak to this? Nobody's here? Well, since 604 Mulberry Street is the application, conditional use permit, and the applicant is Kelly Rogers. Well, being nobody seems to be here, I move that we table this till our next regular meeting.
Second.
And all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Well, this application is tabled. So we move on to our next one on the agenda. Cynthia Johnson, conditional use permit to allow for short-term rentals, 209 East Street. That's Historic District Residential. Do we have somebody here to speak for? Yes, come on up and give your name and address, please, for the record, and tell the board what your plans are, et cetera.
Okay, my name is Kathy Courtney. I live on Railroad Court in Madison on the hilltop. And I am here for Cindy. She is wanting to run an Airbnb at 209 East Street. And she is a super host of 3 other properties with Airbnb. And I think she is applying for a conditional use permit.
Yes, she is. That's court category 581, short-term rental. Board members, do you have questions, comments?
You say she has 3 other rentals that she's operating right now?
Yes, she does.
Inside the city, downtown?
Not in this city. No,
Not in this
she
city.
lives in Bloomington. Her
Okay.
other rentals, I don't know their
Okay,
location.
but not in Madison?
No.
Any other questions, board members?
No, I'll just make a comment, because I own the 2 properties south of her, and so parking really shouldn't be a problem, especially on the street, because my parking's in the alley. So there should be plenty of parking, I would think, in front of the street. I know we usually say, a couple of cars. But it could easily accommodate 2 to 3 cars. And I know she put in, house rules too, didn't she?
Yes. House rules are included.
So I see no problem in the area.
And I would tend to agree with you because in that neighborhood is that giant wall. And nobody parks along there, and then when you go around the corner, that wall goes on, that's First Street, I think. There's no parking there that anybody I've ever seen parks there, and then across the street, there seems to be a few spots. It just seems to be a place where people sparsely park along in there.
Right.
How many people is she planning on having there at once?
I think on the 209 property, there could be 4 to 6 people that could stay there at one time,
So you're talking 2 or 3 cars?
possibly.
'Cause
Usually it's just a family. I mean, from previous experience, usually it's just a family with 2 or 3 children.
Explain the short term, is it like 3 days, 4 days, does she have a limit, or?
It's called a short-term rental, and it could be two days up to maybe a week. Just all
Okay.
depends on how long they need the property.
Well, the reason I asked asked about cars is because obviously parking is a scarce commodity sometimes in Madison. And don't wanna allow too many cars so that the residents around the neighborhood can't park.
Yes.
So board members, certainly a motion could include a limit on how many cars. So you're estimating max, say, 3 cars.
Yep, thank you. She owns both properties, 209 and 211.
Okay, yes, because that is a really pretty rehab place and both. And there are 4 apartments total in there, correct?
No, at one
No.
time it was 2 different houses and then it was combined to one big house. Because the previous owners, it was just a single
It-
family.
Yes,
And they probably had between 4 and 5 cars with them.
it was 4 or 5 cars with them? Oh.
So
Well,
parking should,
Cindy and her husband have 2 children, so I know that would be 1 car if they were staying on one side. And then if they were renting out the other side, that would be 1 more car, possibly 2. But like I said, most Airbnbs, a family comes and they're all in 1 car.
and 4 people, you're probably looking at a max of 2 cars.
Yes,
There are
yes.
couples on the weekend.
And like you said, in front of the wall, there's plenty of parking there.
Right, because I live at 203 and I own 205 and we all park in the back. Of course, my children are at college. At most, they bring 2 cars up front, but we easily have parking for 4 in front of our 2 residences. In the corner lot, they hardly ever park in the front. Like I said, most of us have parking in the back. They do not have parking in the back, is their only problem. So they would have to park on the street. But then you have the youth shelter across the street. There's plenty of parking down in that block there.
Any other questions, comments, board members? Would anybody in the audience like to speak for or against this application? Yes, ma'am. You can have a seat, ma'am. If you'd kindly give your name and address for the record, please.
Shelley Murphy, 418 East Second Street. I talked with them, the neighbors Cindy and them, and I told them I'd like to be a good neighbor, but I am concerned about a VRBO being right in my backyard because my property does have off-street parking that faces their outdoor living space. We have had problems several times. That is not an alley. A lot of people think it is. It is how we get to our off-street parking and it's how people drive through. And we've had several times where we've had to try to get a hold of somebody or not be able to leave our parking area because people have blocked it to unload, do whatever, and they could be gone for an hour. Our concern, and I told her, is that you have people coming to stay. They're going to be unloading things. They might think that they can just park there. It's happened before. I've lived there several years. I'm over 10, I don't know, 20 years. And, it's been a problem before. I've also had people that wanna park in our off-street parking and then we can't park. You say there's a lot of parking, but on the weekends, there's not always a lot of parking, especially on Saturdays with church, which is when a lot of VRBO people want to come and stay. She also informed me that one side would be maybe 4 people, the other side would be 6. So, and I know from renting VRBOs and looking at them before in other places, that sometimes there's allowances for extra people, which means more cars. Just concerned a little bit about parking. I'm concerned about the width of the alley. It's very narrow. It's not really an alley, I guess I should say. It's Adams Avenue, or, Adams Avenue. It is a street. It's very narrow through there. So we already have an issue we've had with the corner VRBO not cleaning their street and this, like 3 feet into the road, there's brush that hits our cars as we're trying to go into the park. And they live in California, so they haven't cleaned it up. Now luckily Cindy and them, we were talking about that, and they said that wouldn't be an issue. I know that they have a good person to supervise, but I am still concerned.
Do you have any signage there at your parking?
I do.
That
It's
says
not
no
apartments, it's I live in a house, and I do have parking that says, or signs that say, do not park, it's private property, but we've still had issues.
Okay. So, but primarily, do you park there or on Second Street?
We park on Second, but we also park on off-street
yeah.
Especially when there's church, because you can't park in
Yeah.
front of our
I
house
mean,
when there's church.
Yeah, off-street parking downtown is a real commodity.
Yes.
It's good to have.
And, there is also, the alleys, the street, I keep saying it's alley, 'cause it looks like one, but it's very narrow. They have their garbage cans next to it, which is very narrow, but if you have a lot of people there, I'm concerned about that. Are they gonna make sure all the trash is in the trash cans? Is it gonna be into the alley, making it difficult to get through, or the road get through? Will it be out of the trash can, because there's raccoons in the neighborhood, killing trash? Just some concerns. My main concern, I guess, is if we do allow this, because I wanna be a good neighbor, and is it gonna be one of those things where it's just, are we gonna revisit it? Is it gonna be something where we do it for a year, and if there are issues, we can readdress it? I'm concerned for the fact that we might just do that, and, they say it'll be 5 to 10 years until they retire here, but what if it's not? And then it is an issue and we've approved it. And then, I've been living there all this time, and then it starts impacting myself.
But you talk to the owners, and that's
I
their,
did talk to them.
and that's their intentions.
That's what they say, but I've known that's happened with other people that say they're gonna come in and we're gonna do it for a few years and then they'll stop. And I told them that I was coming to put it on the record, I told them my concerns. I told them I wanted to be a good neighbor, cause, if they are eventually planning to move here, I want to be a good neighbor to them.
Is there someone local then that oversees this property?
I think she's going to be overseeing it.
Oh, okay.
But, you can't, and like they even said, you can put in your rules, don't park in people's parking places, don't block the alley. But, again, who's going to enforce it to make sure they don't?
And that's the only place Dr. Michaels gets his mail.
And, that's in front of Dr. Michael's house, I said that's the way to get through,
But again, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but my property is right next to theirs. So, I see it all, and I saw the previous neighbors, and they would block it a lot. I agree they would, because
And
sometimes
we
I would
park
have to go
there.
around another way.
Yeah.
But Dr. Michael's mailbox is in the other alley.
Yeah, but where we're at, if they block it,
Right.
you can't get out.
You're right, you're exactly right.
Because they've already built, the people previously have already built a fence up to the edge of the road, so you
Right.
can't hardly get out anyway.
That's true.
So I had to tell them, because they were unloading things,
Right.
I said, I need to get out, and actually I was late going where I needed to go, because then,
Right.
they wanted to talk, and I didn't wanna be rude, but I
Right.
needed to get somewhere, and I was late, because I had to wait for them to move.
But yeah, that was a
It's
chronic problem with
big
them.
concern.
It was, but I think, and I've talked to the people obviously next to them, because like I said, it borders my property. I've lived there, that's my childhood home,
Yeah.
so I've been there for a long, long time. And as far as parking in the front, of course, when I was younger, I had to park in the front, because my parents would park in the back. But there is plenty of parking up there, and yeah, on weekends, certain weekends, it's hard for anybody to park there.
I
But
just noticed at
in
church
the
time, it's
longer,
hard to
but
park
like I
in.
said before, they had 4 or 5 cars,
Yeah.
and so
They had 3.
they had each kid, and they had 3 kids, and they had 2 more. So,
Well,
because
we've
I
only
know,
ever seen 3
yeah,
come in and 2
because I had to deal with it out front every once in a while when my kids were home from college. So, except for special weekends, I don't think we're gonna have a problem with parking. I just don't see it.
Well, I could see at least 4 cars if you're renting that whole place as possible.
Yeah, I could too, but like I said, we've dealt with that before, and we've got the whole rest of that. Right, yeah, the blocking, obviously, but I don't think it's gonna
There's that
happen.
many people using the trash, is it going to overflow?
Right.
Like this weekend, it was a little bit pushed out with all the boxes and things
Right.
that were there, and it was hard to get.
But like I said, I'm right next to them,
Yeah.
I'm gonna see it too.
So I
problem.
guess I'm concerned that I wanna make sure that if this is done, that it's not going to be just like a permanent thing. I would like to see it maybe a year, so we can address it again if it becomes a problem.
Correct.
Or if there's a problem, I can come in and address it.
But understand, if this were, conditional use were granted, you're not limited to an annual review on that. If you have complaints against what the
Right.
conditional use permit, you can bring those forward at that
Yeah.
time. If it happened next month, you could come in to the,
I just wanna
building
make
office.
sure it's not an issue, because it has been an issue in the past, even without it being a rental. And with a rental, there's usually more issues, because those people aren't your actual neighbors. They're there for a temporary amount of time. How loud are they gonna be? I know she said they were gonna put like limits on how loud they're gonna be. I mean, I'm
There's
the
not that
only
bad.
one that really, my yard, is backed up to their thing, except for some of the other people that might be there. And, I don't know how they're gonna do that. Like, are they gonna have both people sharing that space? And, and there's a
conditional use, it's subject to conditions, and you can go to the mayor and raise Cain, you can come to city council and raise Cain.
And I know. And like I said, I don't wanna be a bad neighbor. I just wanna be concerned that it doesn't affect my living. I've been there a long time and, you know,
Well, we understand that, and that's why it's a conditional use,
Yes.
subject to conditions.
so it would be like a temporary thing, that if there was issues, you could come back.
Well, the renewal, for example, if the motion said after 1 year it has to be renewed, well, prior to that, you can come in if you document abuses, you can come to the building office, you can come to the mayor's office, you can come to these meetings, you can come to city council.
Yeah, I'm hoping there's not going to be any issues, but I just wanna be proactive, and I even talked to him before, because I said I was just coming to make sure it was on the record,
Yes, good idea. Yes, ma'am.
so.
And Shelley, I wanted to tell you, I could always give you my number, and if there's an issue, I can get to it right away. She lives in Bloomington, but I'm going to be the person in
Yeah.
Madison managing.
Yeah, and I'll make sure I get your number,
Yes,
because
and
I
know
worry
your
about.
husband or
Yeah, he said
friends
that.
from work, and, so that
Yeah.
won't be an issue.
I just know
can
it's
get all
been-
that under control pretty fast since I live so close.
Okay.
That helps,
That helps, cause
cause I know her living in Bloomington,
Yeah.
that would be an issue.
it's a issue, you know, just that I'm concerned about, cause it's already happened, it's even already happened now, you know, just that.
Just her moving in.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot to do.
Yeah, so, anyway, that's
We
just a
could even
concern.
possibly maybe put no parking signs somewhere, so they won't park in the alley.
We can put that in a motion.
Well, she might
I
put
know
that
they
in her
said they
house
would
rules.
ask them to do
In
that.
your house rules.
Yeah, in
you
her
can
house
put
rules
that.
would probably be
It's a
the
road.
town.
I keep calling it an alley, cause it looks like an alley, but it
I
actually.
mean, we've
is
always
a-
treated it as an alley. When we were young, you couldn't go past a cross alley, cause that's what it was concerned. But she might put that in the house rules, so when they know exactly.
Okay.
Park in the front, you know, don't park, we always called it an alley, for
Yeah,
50 years we've called it an alley.
It looks like an alley, but and they thought it was too, and I told them, I said, actually, it's Adams Lane, or Adams Avenue, actually, I looked it up, Adams Avenue, and it's a road.
So you're thinking then East Street parking only, or the Airbnb?
Yes,
Okay,
there is no on-site parking.
okay,
No, just the back of the house, there's just a
Right.
small courtyard.
yeah.
Yeah, cause a lot of people sometimes would come there thinking they could park, and it's not their parking, it's ours, but,
It might be beneficial to, from the Airbnb folks, you know, they'll see that it's saying do not park there. It may benefit you some, actually.
well, hopefully, we've had that signs for, ever since we've been there, we've had people park and, you know, have to deal with it sometimes, but,
Understood.
We've had this issue before with a certain.
especially on, you know, Saturday nights and Sundays when they have church, that, the roads are busy.
We've had this issue before at a certain place that brought a lot of people in on narrow roads. And they set up a series of signs and put it in their rules, put it on their website. Do not go this way to get here, and that seems to have worked pretty well. So that can be in a condition imposed in a motion. Anybody else like to speak for or against this? Something new? Board members, any other comments, questions? Then we will do our findings of fact. Conditional use, and this would be use number 581, which we've used before. Number one, do you agree this is the right one, Mr. Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Ferris?
Yes, I do.
Mrs. Burkhart?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Eaglin?
Yes.
And 581 has been used before for these, it's right. Number two, well, does this go with the zoning ordinance, et cetera, Mr. Acosta?
Yeah, I think with the zoning ordinance, allowing the conditional use as well as the comprehensive plan, inviting some more tourism and stuff to the area.
Mr. Ferris?
Yeah, I think it fits in well, with the general objectives and the city's comprehensive plan. This is, just another, example of the type of application that this board, gets a lot of.
Mrs. Burkhart,
Yes, 5A1's allowed in historic district with conditional use.
Mr. Eaglin,
Well, Madison, has become a destination for a lot of folks, they like to visit Madison. So I just think this ad and the character of the neighborhood, I would think will be hurt by this usage.
yes, tourism certainly is one of the general objectives, so I think that one's met. Number 3, this will be, does it go with the general area? Mr. Acosta,
Yes, so there's no change to the, physical building or the layout or anything of that nature.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I mean, there's not gonna be any changes to the structure. It's gonna look like a house, and it's gonna look like the house that's already sitting there, so.
Mrs. Burkhart,
I see no change in the character of the area.
Mr. Eaglin,
Yeah, I see the same thing, and with the parking situation with the youth shelter across the street, there's usually not maybe one car there or one of the directors. I think the parking won't be an issue if supervised.
the area is residential, but Airbnb type things are all over the place, so I think that one's met. Number 4, hazardous or disturbing to neighboring uses, Mr. Acosta.
No, I think, listening to the, potential issues that, may be there, and with proper house rules, I think having a local representative here to monitor that on a, daily type basis, I don't think, there will be an issue with that.
Mr. Ferris,
I agree with Mr. Acosta's comments.
Mrs. Burkhart,
I agree, I see no disturbance to the neighborhood.
Mr. Eaglin.
I agree.
Given enforcement of rules, I think that one's met. Number 5, this is utilities, Mr. Acosta.
Again, it's the existing building using the existing, resources.
Mr. Ferris,
Yep, I agree. It's an existing structure that's been there for a long time, and it won't require any additional, services.
Mrs. Burkhart,
It's adequately served by services.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yeah, I see no change in utilities.
I don't even think this one's an issue. Number 6, detrimental to the economic welfare, Mr. Acosta.
No, I think if anything, it would be a benefit.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I think it has a positive, impact on the, community.
Mrs. Burkhart,
I agree, I see no detriment to the economic welfare.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yeah, I too think it's a positive.
And I do not think it's gonna harm the welfare of Madison. Number 7, this is excessive production of traffic, noise, smoke, etc., Mr. Acosta.
I think again, going back to, the house rules with quiet times established, obviously there's concern on the parking, but I think from some of the board members that are very familiar with the area, don't consider that an issue. Obviously, we don't want the parking and blocking the neighbors, but, I think we're good with this.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I don't think any of those things are gonna be a problem. I think, with good communication from the, owners, Airbnb, and through our, motion, we can address any potential issues there.
Mrs. Burkhart,
I agree, I don't think that there's gonna be any detriment. Traffic, I think if anything, it would be just a spot problem that would happen at any time, which could happen, that happened in the past when you had people living there. But I don't see any big problem with that. I think traffic would probably affect me the most in the front there, and I just don't see a problem there.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yeah, I was glad to see the property manager here to listen to all the concerns, and I think it will be managed well because of that participation.
I don't think these noise can be addressed by enforcement of the rules with a local manager, traffic no issue, parking. As has been pointed out, it was previously a private residence with a number of cars, so I don't see any change there. I think that one's met. Number 8, this is interfering with traffic, Mr. Acosta.
As we talked about this is all street parking, there's no, issue, obviously adequate roadway, around.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I don't think approving this, as a short-term rental is gonna change any aspects about, the vehicular approaches and traffic in that area.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree with those comments.
Mr. Eaglin.
I agree, it should not be an issue.
And I don't think there will be an overwhelming of traffic on that street. I think that's not much of an issue. Number 9, this is loss of historic features, Mr. Acosta.
No, I don't see any impact there. I mean, managed by the historic district and, keep close tabs on that.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything's gonna really change. So things will maintain themselves as they are.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, there's been no change. In fact, they've, maintained it well from previous owners.
Mr. Eaglin.
I see no changes in the neighborhood because of this.
And I think it's helping preserve that historic house. We've gone through our finding of fact. It's time for a motion. I move we approve this conditional use period, or conditional use for a period of 1 year with the following conditions: that the house rules as submitted be adhered to and enforced, that quiet hours be from 11 p.m. to 8 a.m., and that the rules include notifying the tenants that there is no parking in the alley, and that this be made clear to the to the renters, and that there be posted signs to that effect in the appropriate places.
I'll second that.
We have a roll call.
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart.
Yes.
Carl Eaglin,
Yes.
Rick Ferris,
Yes,
Scott Bolden.
Yes. Well, ma'am, you can tell her you have your conditional use for a year, and we appreciate your being the manager. And we have every confidence you'll watch over it well. Let's see, that concludes our new business, old business. Mr. Gurley at 2900 Wilson Avenue, he paid his renewal fee, so that permit is renewed. Is there anything else I've left out, staff? Motion to adjourn? Well, I guess I made a motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We are adjourned. Didn't even know I'd made a motion.
They jump on that one, you know, so.
Good
See ya.
night.
Oh, well, you just,
I survived.
Mr. Eaglin, you survived your first meeting.